Daniel Morales is a 19-year-old pre-law freshman at U of M, affiliated with the Migrant and Immigrant Rights Advocacy, which is part of the Coalition for Tuition Equality. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, Mitch, how's it going?
Good. Sorry I had to sit through all that hit somebody thought.
No, it's fine. I appreciate your show taking interest in the issue, and I'm happy to be on.
So you are, you grew up here in Detroit. You graduated from Melvindale High School.
That's right.
And you got into U of M, but you were basically told, well, your tuition is going to be, you know, as if you're from out of state. Now, tell us your status. I mean, if you're classified here as illegal alien, I'm sure people are listening to that saying, well, what's he doing here, period. Explain your status here.
Right. Well, I was actually brought to this country at a year old. My parents actually met in Detroit, and they were both here legally. My mother was here on a tourist visa. My father was here as a permanent resident with a green card. He actually got his residency through the Immigration Reform and Control Act in Ronald Reagan's administration. So my parents were both here legally. They met here legally. My parents became pregnant with my twin sister and I, and moved to California to start a new life. Unfortunately, my great-grandmother died. My mother went to the funeral in Mexico, and that's where I was accidentally born. And with that came my undocumented status. My parents were both legal, and when I came back to the country at a year old, from then on, I would have to petition for my residency, which just means I have to apply for my residency since my father's a resident. Mm-hmm. So I never entered the country illegally, and neither of my parents are illegal, but I still face that title of being called an illegal immigrant, whereas I refer to myself as I was formerly undocumented. Now I'm a legal resident. Actually, last year in July of 2011, I actually was finally granted my permanent residency, so now I have my green card, and I pay in-state tuition rates.
Right, now, you could have done that at an earlier age.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I applied to these. I actually waited 10 years to hear. It's a two-application process. There's an I-130, which is your initial process, where you apply to say, hey, my father's a resident. I deserve to be. I have a legal right to be one. Here's my application. Unfortunately, our immigration system is so broken and so backlogged that I didn't hear back for almost a decade on that application.
10 years, wow.
Yeah, so within that time frame, within those 10 years, you're kind of left in limbo, right? You're not here illegally, though some people would like to refer to you as an illegal. You are just simply waiting for immigration to get its stuff together and give you what you deserve. Mm-hmm. And it was within that 10-year frame that I graduated from high school. I was one of two students from my high school to actually be accepted to the University of Michigan. I was a first-generation high school graduate. Both my parents never graduated high school. My father has a third-grade education, and the University of Michigan really wanted me. Unfortunately, I went up against their residency classification guidelines, which said that I had to pay out-of-state tuition. Even though I had been paying Michigan taxes, my parents, working, my dad's worked every day for the past 30 years in this country, paying, taxes legally, and I was being told that I had to pay out-of-state tuition when I've been living in Michigan since I was 9 years old. I've been going to Michigan public schools, and I went to no private schools. I went to all public schools.
Right. Okay, so I think most people listening to your case would say, well, here's a kid who got caught in a long paperwork battle. He's got his paperwork now, and all's well that ends well in your case. You're getting the lower tuition rate now as a freshman. Right. But for the larger issue at hand, for other people who are here who don't quite have your narrative, and who may have been just brought here illegally, whose parents may be here illegally, but who are living and working, in jobs, and the fact that they are able to get jobs or get paid is a different conversation for a different show. Right. Do you feel that they should, simply by dint of the fact that they are physically in the state of Michigan, they should be entitled to the essentially 50% off rate for tuition if they apply to the school and get in?
Well, it's not necessarily that just by their physical being in the state of Michigan that they get all of a sudden some kind of discount, but we're not asking that they get preference or anything. We're asking that they be treated equally, that all Michigan residents, regardless of immigrant status, be guaranteed that right to in-state tuition. I mean, as a resident of the state of Michigan, who, for the most part, their parents pay sales tax, property tax, and income tax, which is something that's debatable. But for the most part, people have this preconceived notion that undocumented immigrants and their parents are just incredibly good at dodging paying tax. I mean, the IRS does its job. People you pay your sales tax, you pay your property tax, you pay your income tax. So we're not asking for preference or a discount. We're just asking that they be treated as equals, and that if you're from Michigan, it kind of follows that you should be guaranteed Michigan in-state tuition.
I think that what most of the listeners that you're sort of referring to in terms of their judgment on it aren't if they're thinking about it, I don't think they're thinking so much about who's paying taxes. I think they're thinking more about how are you here? If you're illegal and you're not supposed to be here, why has someone not come and said you're not supposed to be here? Go back to where you came from.
Well, simply, it's just because you're in this country without documentation doesn't mean that you should be deported. I mean, as you've heard, there are plenty of cases, millions of cases of people who are here and are caught in this backlog. They are the majority. There is a pathway to residency for some. There is not a pathway to residency for others. But as we know, we have a president who's willing to sign the DREAM Act, which would give undocumented students, those undocumented students which you speak of, who have no pathway to residency, whose parents have no pathway to residency, if they decide that they want to pursue their education or they want to enlist in our military, they have a pathway to residency. So our president has said that he will not, deport students who can benefit from the DREAM Act, because if that gets signed into law, then they have a way of becoming permanent residents.
Meanwhile,
here
in Michigan, this is still the status quo. Are they considering changing this right now, or what?
The University of Michigan. Yeah. Well, the coalition, it's a coalition of student organizations, many student orgs like the ACLU, the undergraduate chapter, the University Central Student Government, the Detroit Partnership, Human Rights for Education. These are all members of our coalition who have been fighting for this all since our creation this past fall. And, the regents are understanding that not only are they deterring diversity, but that they're kind of perpetuating this injustice in which there are students like myself who pay into the system and are not able to benefit from it.
Now, throughout the state, it's a mixed bag, right? This is a school-by-school decision. This is not a state determined thing, right? Like Western Michigan.
The state has no control over the public universities because they're constitutionally autonomous. So every university crafts its own policy.
In Western Michigan, for example, anyone who can prove residency gets the in-state rate. Other schools, you have to pay the out-state rate. What about on a national scale? Is there a percentage of, in general, how this is treated?
Well, there are states that have, I think it's 13 states now that have passed in-state tuition. Some people refer to them as DREAM Acts, which they're different from Michigan in which that their state legislatures can craft a law and pass a bill that would allow their public universities to offer in-state tuition to all undocumented students from within that state.
And are there any states
in California and New York, states that understand that they have students who are going to go through K through 12 because, as we know, the Supreme Court has defended the right of undocumented students to have a K through 12 education.
And are there states that are exactly the opposite, that have like a blanket policy?
There are states like Arizona, Alabama. We do have those states that have passed anti-immigrant laws, and even states that have engaged in gentlemen's agreements in which they have banned undocumented students from their campuses altogether, from all public universities.
All right, Daniel Morales is 19 years old. He has his residency here now, and but as you can hear, for the last 10 years, or just prior to, went through this sort of limbo, and was, when he first got into U of M, was facing twice the cost that the kid living next door might pay if he got in as well. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate you joining us.
No, thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to take some phone calls on this. 877-44-MITCH. What do you think the policy should be here, either statewide or per school or whatever? Do you think that by virtue of living here and perhaps having parents who pay taxes, or the kid himself or whatever, and just being part of the Michigan residency, that ought to be enough? Or do you have to be a legal citizen of the United States in order to qualify to be a citizen of Michigan, essentially, and get in-state tuition? 877-44-MITCH. Just heard of, obviously that kid sounds like he belongs at Michigan. 877-44-MITCH. He's only a freshman. But, there are people who are very law and order about this and say, look, there are all kinds of compelling cases, but there's a reason that you're supposed to do things the right way or get proper paperwork. Then people who are in that system say, yeah, try it. See how fast the immigration system works. It can take you years to get your paperwork. 877-4015. So what do you think about the idea of giving the in-state tuition rate to students who are classified as illegal aliens here? Debbie, you're on the Mitch Albom Show. Hi.
Mitch, my thing is I think that only one criterion to get into a university. I think, these kids work hard enough once they leave high school that every student should be given the same opportunity to pay the same rate. We're the strongest country in the world, and we offer so many opportunities. I think that we would be, cutting ourselves short if we didn't do that.
Okay, thank you for that. 877-44-MITCH. Steve, you're on the Mitch Albom Show. Hi.
Hi, how you doing, Mitch?
Good.
Oh, well, I'll get straight to the point. Not only don't I think they should get a in-state tuition rate, I don't think they should get an out-of-state tuition rate. These are taxpayer-funded dollars that are funding these universities, and if they're here illegally, I don't care how they got here, I don't believe they should be entitled to a free education on our expense.
Well, it's not a free education. In neither case, they're paying at least half the rate, or they're paying the full rate.
Yeah, it's subsidized.
Well, that's if they get the in-state rate, yeah.
Well, true, but the whole point is, if we didn't have all these free subsidies for the illegals, then we wouldn't have this large influx of illegals in this country. We've got so many handouts on the taxpayer, they're all on taxpayer doll, that it makes it so there's so much incentive for them to come here.
Well, Kenny made a point in the break about an example of what about a family that comes here when their kid is, 14 years old or so, gets in the 2 years of high school, right? You were saying that you have to have in order to qualify for Michigan residency, goes to college on a half tuition thing, and then as soon as it's done, leaves the state. Just basically came here for the education at a reduced rate. Is that fair? On the other hand, we don't keep kids who go to University of Michigan who grew up here. We don't keep them here. It's not like once you graduate, even with the ones that get full scholarships and don't have to pay anything, it's not like we can say to them, well, we give you a full ride, so you have to stay here 10 years. Right. Brad, you're on the Mitch Albom Show. Hi.
Mitch, I don't agree with giving illegal aliens the in-state tuition rate. I came here in 1999, and since that time, bought 2 Met contracts for my 2 boys, and have been paying on those for over 10 years, and I like playing by the rules, and they're going to have the opportunity to go to college. I think these students in question have the opportunity to go if they have the grades and meet the other criteria, but it's a issue of cost, and if my son chooses to go to Purdue or Ohio State, I have to pay out-of-state tuition for that, and that's the way it is. Those are the rules.
I also wonder, what's the scholarship situation? I mean, it's one thing as to what they're charging you for in-state or out-of-state, but then if you come from under the poverty line or whatever, are we then also paying all that tuition and scholarships? Then that really is money going out, because I don't know what the profit line is at the University of Michigan.
Well, they got
after a certain degree, they're making it.
That's like at the Harvard where they got all these endowments now. They're not losing money, so don't you think universities have some say in that too? Because they're the ones that would be losing the financial, money.
Yeah, they do have some say in it. Each one gets to set its own policy.